We had one car available, a Ford Grand Torino. For those of you who wouldn't remember that particular car, compared to my Bug, it was 20 feet long, 14 feet wide, and 9 feet high. And as I recall, it was a coupe. Maybe that's maybe an exaggeration, but that's how it appeared and felt like to me. Clearly one of the bad realities. I somehow steered this battleship across the Bay Bridge to San Francisco, onto a small Japanese restaurant on Union Street called Mingeya. It was an evening we talked about forever. We sat on the floor and wore paper sandals. Fortunately, I was wearing a tie. If not, I would have had to rent one from the hat check person. This was truly one of the strangest, most magical beginnings we could have ever had. Thinking if I'm doing any more filtering here. We talked about going somewhere on Memorial Day weekend. I decided to Fort Bragg and made a number of calls trying to find a place that wasn't completely booked. Everything was booked. But one of the operators called me back at 3 o'clock in the morning and said, I found a place. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, the next night, we took off, arrived in Fort Bragg about 2 o'clock in the morning. Horrible storm, thunder, lightning, the whole gloomy package. There was a wooden blue whale in the front yard. The place looked dark and spooky. It began to feel more like Halloween than Memorial Day. Not a very cheery looking place. And I was beginning to feel quite embarrassed. The owner was waiting for us, showed us to our room. It was nicely decorated, large, old-fashioned metal bed, walls paneled in Pecky cedar and other interesting types of wood. Daphne and I looked up at the ceiling at the same time. We saw something rather strange. The light fixture over the bed was made of stainless steel, about 3 feet in diameter, with some strange metal apparatus above the lamp. The owner explained that the building had been a sanatorium, an older type rural hospital for long-term care, think tuberculosis. We were staying in what had been the operating room. Another experience provided a lifetime of chuckles for us. We tried to get the room a few years later and were told it was usually booked a year in advance. Mostly by medical people from the East Coast. Our next day was in the delivery room. No, the former delivery room. Still a fun place. There were a series of short trips and adventures after that. The Bug still got us there, although the gas tank was corroded, which meant the fuel filter would plug up and the engine would die. Filters were cheap, so we bought them by the dozen, put them in the glove compartment. We'd hear the engine cough, stop, plug in a new filter, and be on our way. Kathy got to the point she could change them faster than I could. In the early days, my feet worked well enough that we could hike or backpack, Kathy's favorite mode of transportation. While I hated the effort it took to get there, including the having to keep up with her, which was an impossibility, we both fully appreciated the quiet and serenity, the opportunity to be alone, away from the real world. She always brought up special memories, like intimate moments by a mountain stream or a small lake, way up somewhere. Ella Fitzgerald was Kathy's favorite singer of all time. I'd worked with Ella years before, but Kathy had never seen her. Ella did a special concert at the San Francisco Opera House. We got tickets. Kathy dressed in her most elegant fashion in another memorable event was cataloged. We returned to the Opera House many times after that for a different type of event. One of my colleagues at the college had had season tickets for the opera forever, some of the best seats in the house. When he was busy, he couldn't make it to a performance, he would sell the tickets to us. We saw many marvelous performances, and Kathy was in seventh heaven. Probably the greatest fantasy adventure for us were the many trips we made to Trinidad on the northern coast. We were blessed to have the opportunity to stay in a house overlooking the ocean, separated from the world by the ocean, empty space, and our imagination. It became a sacred place for us. We always brought musical instruments and tons of recipes with us. It was a special type of an event. We developed a lot of rituals over the years. Before they moved up here in Placerville, Wednesday was put aside as lunch day. So people would see us on Wednesday going to town to have lunch, visiting with various shopkeepers and art gallery people. As she described it, making sure Placerville, downtown Placerville, still existed. Having a drink with appetizers on the patio before dinner, making sure the animals could join in with their treats. Ordering dry Rob Roy's over at each new restaurant we discovered, and then watching to see what actually was delivered to the table. I'll explain that one later if you don't understand. Starting around the time of her operation, Anna knew when she stayed in bed longer in the morning, so I started bringing her a cup of tea each morning. Many of the rituals changed or disappeared over the years. They still had great value in their particular time. The last year, Kathy had issues with her back and hips. She had a hip replacement in March and declared at that time she was determined to visit Cousin Ed and Julie in British Columbia and was equally determined to go backpacking with her friend Mary Abbott in Washington. She accomplished both goals. They were tiring but incredibly fun events. Over the years, Kathy would wake up in the morning with a smile on her face and talk about a memory of a meaningful experience, serious or funny. During the past year or so, this occurred nearly every morning, recounting some moment in time followed by, "I love you, crazy old man." We would hold each other until we decided if we had to or weren't together. After Kathy was diagnosed in October, we flew back to Montana to explain to the family there what had happened. The morning after our return, we woke up holding each other, looking into each other's eyes. And Kathy said, "I had the most horrifying nightmare last night." We both nodded our heads in silence, just wept. Pastor David asked me a question. I had some difficult answering. He wanted to know what I thought was Kathy's greatest passion, the thing that gave her the greatest satisfaction. I gave him a few examples of things that I knew were important to her: family, friends, hiking, and so forth. But I couldn't get that idea of the thing that gave her the greatest satisfaction. I couldn't filter that to that level during my usual 3 a.m. internal conference that I go through. It finally occurred to me. The most satisfying thing in Kathy's life was walking with people through the difficult spaces in their lives, past or present, and understanding the power that life experiences can have in directing or controlling their lives. Her joy to be a partner in that journey and experience people growing or healing to the point where they could walk on their own and continue to use the tools they have now stored in their cartridge belts. To those of you who have traveled that path with her, thank you for bringing a special sense of joy and satisfaction to her life. Your forward motion and moments of personal growth and success enabled her to share her residual energy with others. You may feel she gave you a gift, but I want you to understand the powerful gift you provided her, a reason for being, a life mission. You had a power that you never realized you had, an incredible influence on this person who meant so much to you. I mentioned about getting up early. This was one of those strange days where I woke up at 4 and I thought, I don't think I should say what I was going to say. And went to the computer and decided, let me think of something else, which wasn't working. But as I was playing around trying to find notes that I'd written to myself, not on little pieces of paper this time, but on the computer, I ran across something that I had never seen before. It was in Kathy's directory. And I copied it off and I wanted to read it to you today. This is the present. It's called Counting My Blessings. I just received the death sentence. Not all the particulars are in yet, but yesterday's CT scan revealed what can only be interpreted as pancreatic cancer. I already had my suspicions after getting the report from last week's ultrasound. So I had done some research. Yes, the numbers are dismal. Luckily, I believe in miracles and science, and the combination of the two might deliver a repeat. This death sentence gives me freedom to speak out like never before. I was born in Sacramento, but that was only for the purposes of being born. My mother wasn't too excited about delivering in the Placerville Sanatorium, which was the closest thing we had then for a hospital. I was delivered by the much-loved Dr. Jean Babcock 6 months before the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Placerville and the world were very different then. My father worked for the Forest Service and farmed a pear ranch. My mother was a homemaker. Some of my early memories revolved around the circumstances of war, the fun of playing tag in the living room during a blackout, the delight of popping and then squishing the colored button in the plastic bag that held that very white margin. Later there were sirens and excitement after the announcement of the armistice. Life was good. 40s and 50s held many challenges, but growing up in a small town with a loving family with lots of freedom to explore, both on the ranch and in the nearby mountains, brought gifts of character, curiosity, and confidence. Upon graduating from El Dorado High School, I was eager to get out of town and explore the world. I returned as a full-time resident 33 years ago, doing my postdoctoral internship at the county mental health department. Upon securing my psychology license, I chose to build a private practice in the community of my original home. Until my retirement in summer of 2013, I've had the honor of serving many local individuals, couples, and families as their trusted therapist. An old and wise friend recently directed me to explore whatever fears I might find lying beneath and give meaning to my recent symptoms. I knew I was not afraid of dying or hardship or many of the other things that we humans often contend with. I was very conscious of my not unwise fear of high places with sheer drop-offs, and I'd learned how to manage that fear very well. After some periods of prayer and meditation, an answer appeared to my conscious mind. I fear speaking my truth to those who might be challenged and therefore critical. In my years as a therapist in a small town, I could justify any public silence by the need to keep therapy as a safe place for those with many differing views and truths. No political signs ever appeared on my property. No letters to the editor were ever published, although many were written in privacy of my mind. I neither publicly supported nor challenged in arenas that did not feel safe. Professionally, in the privacy of the therapeutic relationship, I could gently probe or painfully challenge as I felt the need. I could do this because it was my job, and I could balance it with a capacity to also deliver a great deal of caring and support. My death sentence is indeed one of those many blessings. It is not one that we would normally request from the Almighty, but I firmly believe that beneath the sadness of our painful losses lie gifts we recognize and appreciate if we choose to look for them. I get to speak my truth to those I love, and publicly to those who might be challenged and critical. A lot of times when people leave the house, I find myself saying something like, "Do it well." And I would have to suggest, you did it well, sweetheart. Right.